This is BullionMax, the podcast. I'm Mark Allen, along with Sean Reynolds, the customer service manager for BullionMax. We're very honored to have Emmanuel Daniel on the podcast today. He's written a book, The Great Transition: The Personalization of Finance is Here. And we were just talking, Emmanuel is actually a global citizen. And we have a copy of his book up between Sean and me as we speak. We'll have information on how to find out more about Emmanuel and the book up here as well. Welcome to BullionMax, Emmanuel.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Sean. Great to be on this show and to explore, the ideas that you have in mind.
Well, let's talk about this. Do most people know about their own personal finances? Are they aware?
The short answer is increasingly so. I've been following the development of the financial services industry in about any number of countries around the world. I've built the Asian Banker over the last 28 years, which gives me access into highly developed economies like Singapore and Switzerland. You're saying, and I've seen situations where non-government organizations had to go into villages to teach women to balance both sides of their balance sheet, that money in, money out, right? So there was a time that way. And I think that today, at all levels in many different economies, ordinary people are coming to terms with both sides of their personal balance sheet.
You said different economies, and just before we started, we decided that you're actually a global citizen because you spent time in New York, my favorite place in the world, Beijing, Singapore, and then you travel a lot during the other times that you're not in any of those places. Do we have a world economy now, or are there economies? A Chinese economy, an American economy, even a Russian economy?
I'm not a fan of geopolitics because geopolitics puts the politician up in front to be able to dictate what a world economy should look like. Because I spend 2 to 3 months in a year in any one country, and I'm like in China, like I was there right through the pandemic, 1.5 years sitting there in Beijing. And then, going over to New York and walking down Bryant Park and catching up with friends and so on. What you see on the ground is totally different from what the politicians are telling us. We all have to deal with each other. When you look at the U.S. economy and you look at the balance sheet of the U.S. economy, you look at the trade figures, the U.S. is as dependent on China today as it was before all of these, trade wars started to take effect.
Mm-hmm. Is China, excuse me.
The question is, yes.
I'm sorry. Is China dependent on us as well? Is it codependent?
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so. In fact, the simple answer to that question is, if China didn't the US, and it's as developed as it likes to think about itself, it would have quietly gone out and built on the trade it has with all of the other countries in the world. The truth is that the engine of China's growth has been the export, the manufacturing industries in the south of China that is almost entirely directed at the US. And if the US figures are taken out of the picture, China has a big problem, generating the growth it has. That's where China is right now. Now, where it's heading is based on a number of dependents that are not clear yet. So, so it's not time for us to say that one or the other country is stronger than the other.
What tell us your background. You've been involved in, I guess, banking and finance for at least a few years. Tell us about that.
Well, I wanted very much to become a lawyer. I did my law degree. And on the day that I started working in a law firm, I decided that this is exactly what I didn't want to be. I spent 10 years, I spent 10 years as a corporate wanderer. I worked in consulting a lot. And consulting gave me a perspective in terms of how you are able to be useful to, big businesses, institutions. And then, I had this itch that I wanted to start something of my own. I don't come from a family that are business owners, so this entrepreneurship, sense of entrepreneurship was new, and I just went with the wave, and I started something called the Asian Banker in 1996, which gave me the excuse to go around all of the countries across Asia, meet the chairmen and CEOs of banks, understand how the economies work. And then I built it into the Middle East, into Dubai and the GCC countries, and then eventually to Africa. Now, what's interesting is that in the time that I was building the Asian Banker, I would meet some of the top U.S. bankers. Barney Frank, who wrote the foreword to my book,
Right.
used to be a guest at conferences that we would organize. And then Dick Kovacevich of Wells Fargo and so on. And just a string of people, okay? And the reason is, the top American bankers had all the time in the world when they were visiting Asia. And so I had personal time with them, really, very high quality personal time. And I got a sense of what the issues were in the US from behind the scenes that way. So that sort of completes the view of the world that I have. And coming from a part of the world where the economies were growing fast, like 5% to 8%, and wealth was being created, was a very exciting period in my life. And then to come back to the US and see how the US had its period of such growth, and now it's in the process of consolidating and coming to terms with the rest of the world that are sort of caught up, then helps me complete the picture of what I think will be happening going forward in what you just called globalization. I think that globalization has two forces in them. One is that people around the world are becoming more assertive about their own identities. They want to know, they want to be able to say where they come from and that they count in the global realm of things. And at the same time, we are becoming so connected or interconnected with each other that we are becoming aware of each other as well. It's narrate. It's curating that narrative, curating that conversation. That's very important. I think a little bit of that conversation is distorted because of the platform economy, because it onboards opinions and it accentuates differences a lot. And so therefore, we try to take things from very, very, partisan views. But when we are sitting on the table at the same place, we then suddenly see that all of us are confronted with the same issues.
And we're the same. Our guest is Emmanuel Daniel, and he's written a book called The Great Transition. The personalization of finance is here. We're going to talk about the personalization of people calling in and looking at the website of BullionMax, and we'll turn over to Sean Reynolds, the customer service manager for BullionMax. What are people talking about with you, Sean, right now?
I think people are a little bit concerned about the value of their dollars in the future. And more so, I would say these are grandparents, and they're looking after kind of the end of their lives and their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives. And they've always been in that role of protector, but now they've found that this is a new space where they really need to step up. So even if mom and dad helped with college, mom and dad helped with other things, they feel like there's a legacy opportunity to protect their families, and they're looking to do it with precious metals such as gold and silver. And
what are they looking at specifically in general?
Yeah, it's hedging against inflation is one thing, but also just making sure their dollars, their paper dollars, are invested in the commodity markets of precious metals. So, they don't want these dollars that are hanging out there uninvested elsewhere, not doing anything, but they're afraid of the stock market. They want to make sure they get a better return on their investment than bonds and safer things of that nature. They want to try to find something that is safe, but also will have a future yield that's worthwhile as they hold it over time.
Well, I'm going to put our guest, Emmanuel Daniel, on the spot. You don't mind, do you, Emmanuel?
No, not at all. In fact, what Sean says is absolutely spot on. It's not the wealthy people, but the people who are going to be building a lifetime of savings, who need to think about what wealthy people are advised by their private banking clients, which is
right.
Diversify, right? And firstly, cash under the pillow, you have no guarantee what it's going to be worth 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. Secondly, there's the mortgage, which is subject to so many of the economic issues in the local community. And then there comes gold and silver. And today, gold, silver, precious metals have a utility dimension to them, especially if they are used for new technologies and so on. And who's to say which of these assets will have its period of accentuated growth because of developments around the world? And it's actually on that same basis that we think about ephemeral assets like cryptocurrencies. In that it's not whether cryptocurrencies are for real or not, but what do they represent at the back end? What trends are we looking at in the global economy, network effect, and so on? Mm-hmm. So on that basis, I wouldn't rule out anything. In fact, I would say that it's very important ordinary people be given the opportunity to accumulate any asset that they believe in on the basis that they believe in. There are regulators who make it difficult for ordinary people to invest in gold. If you try and buy physical gold today, you go to the bank, it's in the basement, you got to fill up forms, stuff like that. Now, if you're able to do that,
Sean.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I do need you to sign for it, though, but I will send it to you.
Of course.
So if you make it easy for people, ordinary people, to make their choices, you're also giving them the ability to manage their perception of where asset appreciation will evolve.
Mm-hmm.
With the inflation that's here in the U.S., other countries around the world are experiencing hyperinflation. I think of World War II, where people would bring in wheelbarrows full of cash for a loaf of bread. Do you think it's going to be that bad?
Not at all, because the World War II hyperinflation was during a period where the German regulators were printing physical money. Today, money is essentially digital. And so we don't see that physical, commodity being generated. And then because it's digital, we can apply it to any number. We now have a wider range of assets that we can apply money to. And that's what we're seeing today. Money goes around looking for the asset that is, most sensible to appreciate, whether it's bond or gold or crypto and so on. So, or even artwork, right, and buildings and so on. So the range of assets able to absorb inflation has widened dramatically. And then when you think about it being applied on a global basis, even within large economies, there'll be certain segments of the economy that will be able to absorb the inflation better than others, as it is in the case in the US.
What about crypto versus precious metals? Can they work hand in hand together? or not?
Right now, what we're seeing is from the numbers, crypto is mimicking the way in which financial liquidity is affecting gold. So it's mimicking gold. That's all that we can say from what's been happening in the last 2 years or so. Whether it will take a life of its own and whether it will have drivers that will drive up the value of crypto on its own, that's subject to a number of crypto-related issues. For example, the fact that crypto is dominated by a few people. And actually, when you think about Bitcoin, I forget the number, but like 6 to 7 investors own a very large amount of Bitcoin around the world. That's not the case with gold. Gold is a lot more spread out between different investors around the world. And therefore, in a way, it's more stable. It may not see spikes in appreciation like crypto does right now, but maybe that's what you want assets to achieve. That is, that they are predictable, that they keep up with inflation, and that's a safe asset that will not, go back on itself.
Yeah, we talk a lot with our clients about kind of the roller coaster ride that they've probably experienced with their 401ks and their stocks and things of that nature, and the fact that we don't see that kind of market volatility in precious metals.
Yeah, I was thinking that didn't crypto in the last month or so take a big hit?
It is taking a big hit. It will continue to take a big hit. There are, in my book, by the way, I talk about crypto in two ways, okay? And they're not related with each other, although many people try to put them together. Crypto, the investable asset, is subject to the same rules as any security, as gold, as any other asset class. Crypto as a technology innovation for the network economy is a totally different story. And that is actually evolving very, very well. And just because it works well for the network economy to be able to fund, network utilities and so on, does not necessarily mean that the value of crypto will go up dramatically. In fact, it might even, implode on itself and still have that utility. So I think that a lot of people, when they talk about crypto, they're actually mixing up the utility of crypto from the investability of crypto. And in the same way, when a lot of people think of gold, they don't talk enough about the utility of gold and think of it as an investable commodity.
You picked the question out of my head there, because I was going to ask that. Do you think that gold and silver both have industrial uses, especially silver right now, with solar panels and being used in electric vehicles and batteries and things like that?
Electronics, phones,
Electronics, yeah. That everyday people, can easily accumulate silver and gold and other precious metals.
And we hope that will be the main driver for the value of any asset, which is the utility of it. Right now, and gold for the longest time, from the days of the Bretton Woods Agreement, right up to the time that the U.S. Left the Bretton Woods Agreement, gold was tied to trade between the different countries. It sort of was the reference currency for the ability of countries to trade with each other. And then the U.S. Exited the Bretton Woods Agreement system. And then it took a life where it was just an asset that was absorbing the excess liquidity in the marketplace. And for a long time, it was there was a counter effect between gold and currency in terms of the impact of inflation. And now, because the asset pool has widened, gold is playing less of that role. So it needs to sort of plug into a new story, and that story, hopefully it's a lot to do with the utility of gold, but not just gold for that matter. I mean, any number of, precious metals.
in the book, the personalization of finance is here. I think that in the past, people they sloughed off knowing about their own personal finance. I was one, but and you've already suggested that people are more involved and interested in their personal finances today. Would you encourage people to look at precious metals as a form of investment opportunities and possibly a hedge against inflation?
I think what needs to happen is that people need to have the tools to access any investable asset that they want to invest in. It's giving the tools in their hands and then leaving it to them to decide. And the way in which people eventually, the ordinary person will decide, which assets are more meaningful than others, is by networking with other users of that asset. So the knowledge pool and the information asymmetry or information symmetry that's created, that's what puts power in the hands of ordinary people. I think we saw a little bit of that last year with the Reddit revolution. You had the meme stocks going crazy.
Right.
And the institutions, the financial institutions, went crazy because the ordinary investor was now forming an opinion that was as strong as financial institutions in directing markets. So we need to see a little bit of that happening to precious metal, so that the things that ordinary people do with it, starts to matter. Right now, that universe doesn't exist at all. You need to look at many developing countries, like India, a lot of Africa, and even China for that matter. Women collect gold as an expression of their personal wealth.
Right.
They pretty themselves up with gold all over their body, right? So
Right.
That's a personal expression, but it seems to not count for anything in other societies. So we need to see a lot of that happening, where what people do with their assets starts counting, and that because of the network effect, the opinion of ordinary people matters.
Listen, we really appreciate your spending some time with us here. I'm going to just ask Sean a couple of last minute thoughts. People can call, and one of the things about BullionMax is that you don't sell. Explain that philosophy.
Correct. I ask a lot of questions to learn what it is people want to do. What are their goals? Why are they considering purchasing precious metals now? And everybody's got a slightly different story, but some of it, there's certainly some common threads that go through it. And then after hearing that, I can suggest products that might help them meet those goals. But ultimately, I get them educated so they make their own purchasing decisions. I want to make sure that they know why they bought what they chose, because it is for them. It doesn't help for me to tell you what to buy. It's better for you to understand what you purchased.
Listen,
it counts for something when they're able to connect with other people and exchange views and stuff like that. And then you start seeing a narrative developing. I hate the word narrative. What it means is you start seeing people developing their own ideas, and if enough people do that, it starts counting for shaping trends in terms of where the price and the valuation of precious metal will evolve.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen if I tell you what to buy.
Right.
It does if you get educated. Then you can talk about it with other people who may be in your same space, or maybe just ahead of that on the learning curve. Or, oh my God, you won't even believe what I just figured out. Yeah, that creates kind of a community.
Now that universe doesn't exist yet for gold. Okay,
right.
So giving people access to information, that's like a first step, and then when you start seeing that universe evolving, the discussions that we will have on where the price of gold is heading will be so different, because today it's dominated by the institutions. and the institutions are opaque, and you don't even understand what's driving price at the back end. So so when we make that transition, and that's the title of my book, by the way, The Great Transition,
Yes.
right? Society itself is moving towards transitioning towards greater empowerment of the individual.
We're going to invite you back in a couple of months because we think you have a good handle on what's happening within the economies of various countries, as well as the personalization, because we're here to help individuals learn about finances, whether it's buying gold and silver or understanding, the falling, the rising inflation and the falling stock market. So we appreciate your time today, sir. Emmanuel Daniel has been our guest. The book, The Great Transition, The Personalization of Finance, is here today. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Sean, for joining us, and thank you for watching. I'm Mark Allen. This is BullionMax. We'll see you next time.
And don't forget to subscribe